Hi everyone! Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Gamasutra Twitch channel. It's me, the voice inside your head. I know you missed me. It's been so long. There was a holiday, a snowstorm. I really wanted to come back, but, you know, the universe just wasn't as down on it. But I'm Brian Francis, a contributing editor at Gamasutra.com. As always, I'm invisible, but I'm your concept, a thought, an imaginary thing. In the lower left-hand corner, however, are two real people. Gamasutra editor Alex Walrow, please introduce yourself.
Hey, it's 2018 and I'm still here in this closet, and it's a pleasure to be stuck in this closet with you and our very special guest. Very special guest, would you mind telling everyone who you are and what you do?
Hi, yes, my name is Justin Bortnick. I was the writer and ARG designer on this game on stream, Glittermitten Grove, which is a perfectly normal game about building a city for fairies.
Normally, I would have been happy to linger in Glittermitten Grove and explore its wonders, but because we need to talk about Frog Fractions 2, I just jumped into Frog Fractions 2.
The jig is up.
The jig is up. We're playing Frog Fractions 2. Thank God this game has been out for a while, so beware spoilers, but also I have a guide open so I can actually figure things out. This is a very strange game. Justin, would you be able to possibly explain it for us? Is that a conceivable thing?
Oh, man. So, that's a really difficult question. Could explain in what direction, right? So,
yeah.
Like, explain from the pitch, or explain the literal video game, or explain the alternate reality marketing.
Well, we're also here because up front, I need to explain that we are here to talk about your GDC talk, and that Gamasutra and GDC are both owned by UBM. So please keep that in mind while absorbing this information about this upcoming talk. You're giving a talk at GDC because you're talking about the alternate reality game that you use to market Frog Fractions 2, right?
Yes, although, so confusingly, the alternate reality game is Frog Fractions 2 in the eyes of some people, because if you play this game to the end, you'll see that this game is Frog Fractions 3. So,
what?
Sure.
So what you consider to be Frog Fractions 2 is really in the eye of the beholder.
So, like, are we Frog Fractions 2 right now?
I think Frog Fractions 2 were the friends that you made along the way in the search for Frog Fractions 2.
Okay. Well, I still haven't played this game, whatever Frog Fractions it is. So if we leave this stream as friends, which is not guaranteed, trust me, but if I'm so lucky, then I'm going to count this as my Frog Fractions 2.
That's great. That's really good.
All right, so let's start on something more concrete, right? Which is, Justin, why do you consider yourself an ARG master?
I don't know if I consider myself an ARG master. I literally had never run an ARG before at all. I, in fact, had never released a commercial product that was a video game before.
Okay.
I guess I made a ROM hack when I was in high school, if that counts. That was, like, pretty popular.
Well, what was it? What did you hack?
It was an Japanese to English translation for a Hideo Kojima Game Boy Advance game that never came out in America. And, you know, he's popular enough that his games, like, get people want to play them. So we just, we spent, like, a summer, me and two other people, localizing it.
Huh. Okay, all right, so we got to move on. What game was that, first of all?
It was Shin Bokura no Taio Gyakushu no Sabata.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Japanese title. It was the sequel to. If you remember Boktai, like the Game Boy Advance game.
Yeah, because I was thinking Boktai. Boktai came out here, so
the third one. They put out numbers 1, 2, and 4 in America, and number 3, which was the best one, did not come out. So we localized that one.
Well, that's a great start.
Yeah. Other than that, in high school, which was like more than a decade ago at this point, I had not done anything. I am a PhD candidate. I work on games and narrative, storytelling, interactive media stuff. And I do podcasts where I talk to a bunch of my friends who are game developers, just because I happened to make friends with a bunch of game developers. And I met Jim through a friend of mine, Zach Johnson, who is the head of Asymmetric Publications, which made West of Loathing last year, which is a great game.
One of the hosts of the very popular Video Games Hot Dog podcast, a luminary in the field.
Yes.
I'm just curious, what is your thesis on? What is your, if you have one already? You said you're a PhD candidate.
Justin, is there a way to dump gems? Or
no, not really.
Restarting.
You can figure it out, Brian. I've faith in you.
Oh no.
It's okay. I've been working on this puzzle for too long. Go ahead, answer Alex's question.
So I don't have my dissertation topic formalized at this point because that will happen probably in the fall, in the upcoming fall. I'm in the prospectus qualifying exam process right now. But
okay, so
to do with games.
Let's maybe walk then through sort of where you were going before I derailed you there, and how did you get involved with sort of taking the reins of this ARG once it was already in place, or were you involved from the beginning?
No, so I was not. I learned about Frog Fractions the same way that basically everybody else did, which is a friend of mine, one of my podcast co-hosts, sent me a link. It was like, play this game. It's really good. And I did, and turns out that's over 1 million people did that, which led to Frog Fractions 2 Kickstarter, which I was aware of, but did not back. I was just kind of like, okay, this looks interesting, kind of. I don't know if I want another one of these, but I'd be interested to see where it goes. But it was just the sell, which was, we're not going to tell you what we're going to make, was not a good enough sell for me when I'm going to invest in a product. I want to see what it is.
Right.
Which, luckily, most people are not like me, apparently. But I found out that there was an ARG associated with it, and I sort of followed it very tangentially through Unfiction forums, which are an ARG solving community. Yeah. But I was never a solver or posting or anything. I just sort of was checking it every month or two to see where things had gone, because it was way over my head, I thought. But as I said, Zach, who I've known for forever, years and years and years, with his Video Games Hot Dog podcast, Jim is one of the other hosts.
Yep.
And so I asked Jim if he wanted to be a guest on my show to talk about the development of Frog Fractions and Frog Fractions 2. And afterwards, I asked him how the ARG was going once we were off the record. And he is like, oh man, it stalled out. I ran out of content. I have to, actually make a video game, which means I don't have a lot of time to make the ARG. And I had, independently of that, just been sort of working on a little puzzle ARG-y thing of my own that I had put on the shelf because I am not a good enough programmer to get it to the point where I wanted it to. So I said, tell you what, I've got this thing. It's 90% done. You can take it for free. It'll buy you, I don't know, a month or two. And that should give you enough time to get on your feet and figure out what you want to do with the rest of it. And he said, actually, I'll just hire you to do the rest of it.
And then how did it go from there? It was easy, right?
Well, yes and no, right? So with not to spoil my whole talk, but it was very seat of my pants.
It was the seat of all of our pants.
It was the collective seat of the pants, because I had a month and a half, 2 months of content that I had already generated, and I had to write up a whole story treatment because the thing that I had written was not really conducive to the story of what was going on in Glittermitten Grove and Frog Fractions already. Mm-hmm. So I wrote up a story, Jim and I went over it, and I just started coming up with puzzles and putting them out there, and any time that they solved a puzzle, the solvers solved a puzzle that it was always way faster than we expected. We'd have to say, okay, well, what are we going to do now? Luckily, the sort of mysterious format of Frog Fractions allowed us to take our time a little bit, because they were never sure if they had solved the puzzle or if they were missing parts of it.
Yeah.
That's the thing I hear a lot about ARG games is that every time the player thinks that the designer's doing some crafty, duplicitous thing and they haven't found it yet, the designers are actually panicking and working the back end to try and figure out what to do next.
I think things generally went the way we wanted it to, or at least the way I wanted it to. I don't know. I can't speak for the rest of the team, but there were definitely times where like they just didn't solve what we wanted them to solve, and they were just stalling on it, and they kept coming up with answers that were not the right answer, but they were cooler than the right answer.
Yeah.
So we just would throw out what we had planned and say, actually, that was the right answer. The story is going to go here now.
Yeah, that's interesting to me from the outside because I got started in this industry because I thought ARGs were cool, and I wasn't smart enough or dedicated enough to stick with them, but I could pitch an article about them and get paid for it, right? And so that's how I started doing this. Is it was an excuse to to turn my fascination with how the design of these games comes together into rent money. And something that really fascinated me about ARGs in general is that so often the story we hear from devs is we didn't expect the players to solve this so quickly. It's always like, this is going to take them a month and it takes them a week, or it's take them a week and it took them 2 days. So it's not often to hear someone say, they would solve part of it or most of it, or they would solve something but come to the wrong conclusion. And we would need to either just roll with that or wait for them. I think something about Frog Fractions and the sort of deliberate air of mystery, which Jim has spoken about at GC in the past, really sort of seems to give you an edge in ARG design. Were there any surprising challenges that came with making an ARG about a game like this that's so mysterious and nebulous?
So the biggest challenge for me, I think, was aside from the general game design challenges of generating enough content to keep people interested, which I don't think is exclusive to ARGs by any stretch, was how fluid the actual thing that we were making was. At the beginning of every week, it was very much what the heck are we going to do this week? So you had to just constantly be on and be creative and coming up with something all the time, because people talk about live development environments, but we didn't even it's not like we have a assembly line of people where I could make something and I pass it off to the next person who polishes it, and so the thing that I'm working on doesn't get seen for a month or two because we just have all this lead time. Mm-hmm. It was literally, okay, I thought of a thing. Jim, can you program this if it's a thing that needs to be programmed, or can I program this if it's a thing that I can do? And within a day or two, it's live. And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. And either way, we'll figure out what to do with it.
Yeah, I think it's a good tack for us to take in trying to sort of walk around your talk, because I don't want to get you just to rehash your deck. I want to leave something for GC, and I also want to go sort of explore the edges, the stuff you couldn't fit into that hour-long talk. So rather than I guess I'm curious to know how you guys actually made it, and sort of the toll it took on you as somebody who is relatively new to the industry and hasn't done this before. But sort of before we get to that, tell me a bit about the stuff you couldn't squeeze into this talk. What do you think is interesting and important to talk about in ARGs that you just couldn't fit into your hour-long presentation?
That's a tough question. I was practicing my talk actually and timing it, and it comes out to of my, 35 minutes, whatever it is. I'm 30 seconds. I'm 30 seconds over, which feels really good. But I talk really fast. You may have noticed that I speak really quickly. So I did get a lot in. The stuff that I didn't get in the talk, a lot of the talk goes over the specifics of what actually happened in the ARG. A lot of it is okay, there's no way for anybody to really go back and play this content at this point. It was all live. It was an event that is over. Mm-hmm. And while there are write-ups and wikis, they're really, really dense and very difficult to follow. No beef with the wiki editors. They have done an amazing job, and I would not be able to do this talk without their incredible archive. But it's inscrutable to a newcomer. So what it really does is I break down the ARG into a couple of different eras. This is this story era, so major narrative arcs, and what the beats and sort of puzzles were for that segment. Even then, I still probably only talk specifically about 30% of what was going on, because there's just not enough time. So I could start like going over specific puzzles. I'm not sure how interesting that would be without like the visuals and such to go with them. But in terms of the more general side of your question, like what do I think I left out about ARG design in general? It's that, and I know this because I often have sort of like after work drinks, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks with Maureen McHugh, who is also here at USC with me, and she did the I Love Bees ARG for Halo back like years ago, and many others. And if you want to talk to somebody about ARG, she's way better at this than I am. Mm-hmm. But it's that every situation is just completely different. You can't, like, the rules of one ARG are not necessarily applicable in terms of how to play or even what the design of it is going to be. She even told me, like, when they did I Love Bees, and it ended up being
the Beast or whatever?
Halo 2 ARG.
Yeah, the Halo 2 one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know she also did Year Zero for Nine Inch Nails, that sort of stuff. But when they did that and it was puzzles, they didn't intend all ARGs to be puzzles, but that's just what it became. They were like, oh, okay, we'll make this thing and there will be puzzles and they'll solve it, but the next thing won't necessarily need to be that. But that's just what they are now. But I think that I would like to see an ARG that's not primarily based on puzzles, but is equally compelling. And I'm not sure if I can solve that problem. I'm definitely not going to solve that problem right here on stream.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean,
that's
an interesting thread to jump down, though. Like, do you think an ARG needs to be anything other than a puzzle? I Halo, I Love Bees was probably my introductory into this, and then I spent a lot of time in the BioShock 2 ARG. And it seems to be only puzzles and then like fragments of narrative if there's a narrative going on. But like obviously those narratives are way more coherent than what Frog Fractions is, or at least palatable, I guess. No, not the right word either.
So I think that Frog Fractions 2's ARG definitely had like a definitive story, and people who were with it for most of it, they can probably tell you in the same way that like somebody who's played a lot of Dark Souls is really sure about what the story was and can tell you like just like really coherently, oh, this, and this happened in this order, and that's the story of Dark Souls. That was actually something that Jim said to me when he was laying out his design intents. He was just like, make it more like Dark Souls. Just keep making it more like Dark Souls. Uh-huh. Which, like, what does that mean? But
I find this whole topic fascinating. We have to sort of be careful how we talk around it, because like I think an alternate reality game can just be anything, right? Like any story, any weird subversion of your day-to-day life, that is in some sense a game of alternate reality.
Right. I think that if you take it to its most literal, alternate reality game, the primary goal shouldn't be to present puzzles, but should be to present a compelling alternate reality. So I think that if you have something that's just puzzles and doesn't have a story that goes with it, doesn't have this narrative hook, it's not an ARG, it's just a puzzle hunt. Like MIT does the MIT Mystery Hunt every year, and it's just you solve a bunch of puzzles, and they're incredibly challenging for puzzle experts, but that's not an ARG. I don't think anyone is going to call the MIT Mystery Hunt an ARG.
No, I totally agree. And it reminds me, this is something I'm really fascinated by. Like when I was doing research for this years and years ago, I found a very early ARG. I think it might have been one of the first ones, if not the first one. And it was in the it was like the mid 90s or something. The SF Chronicle, like put aside money, like grant money for somebody. And it's written down somewhere on the internet. This guy like created a website, and it was like a HTML, like click through. It was like a story. It was a story that pretended to be real, and you would click through, be updated every couple of days or whatever, and you would click through and find out what was happening to like this missing person case or something. And then they would go out and like stage events in San Francisco, and then people could just show up to these things, and then like these actors, and like they would set up these scenarios and stuff. And there were I don't know that there were a lot of puzzles. It was just about like creating this air of mystery, much like Majestic did a couple of years later. And so that I think is really just a fascinating area to explore. But as a creator, like how do you deal with trying to be on and creative basically 24/7? Because somewhere in the world, if you're doing your job right, somewhere in the world, someone is trying to crack your story, your fake reality.
Yeah. So I approached it the way that I approach all of my, like when I was in college and high school, all of my papers that I had to write, which is to not do any work on it at all until it comes to me exactly what I need to do fully formed in my head from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just do it all in one sitting. And that has... I'm waiting for the day where that doesn't work. Because I know, like, someday I'm just not going to have... Like, I'm going to need to come up with something that I can't, but it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And it's the way the brain works. It's like when even if you're not actively thinking about a problem, your brain is still working on it in the back of your head. And that's very much how my thought process works, is I will just do other stuff until the answer comes to me, and when it comes to me, it is completed. Like, it is not a thing that I need to hash out a lot of stuff about in the way that I think a lot of people's process works. And sometimes that's beneficial because it's just like I can get it done really fast. Sometimes it's not, because the idea is actually not very good. But it's just what works for me. And yeah.
So that's really interesting, right? Because that makes a lot of sense, and clearly it has worked. It worked really well in this case. But it is something that you are aware of, is something that you don't know works for anyone but you. And yet you pitched this talk to GDC because presumably you think it's something people should go to. Why do you think this kind of presentation is important to the game industry? Even if it's like, I don't mean to be like, why is what you're doing, why is this so groundbreaking and important? But just why did you think it was worth taking the time and effort to put together a proposal and then write a talk and then practice that talk?
So I think that the content of the talk is largely about what happened. Because I think that there was a real, and you know, just from speaking with other developers, being at like GDC last year and Indiecade and other industry events, that sort of thing, people often their first question is like, so what happened with all that Frog Fractions 2 stuff? I saw an article on Polygon or whatever, but like, what actually was it?
Yeah. And
I've had to sort of like talk around it for a long time, because the game wasn't out, and even now that it is, it's like, well, that's a really long story. I can't just stand here for 45 minutes and tell you the entire history of the ARG. So I think that it was in part because I saw that there was a real desire amongst people who work on games to literally know, like, what actually happened, like basic stuff. What did you do? So that was a huge part of it. The other part is, it's submitted as a business marketing talk in addition to being a game design talk. And while I can't say everybody should do their design the way I do, where it just comes to you, because that's so personal and subjective. Yeah. I can talk much more concretely about what worked in terms of the ARG as a marketing campaign, what didn't work, whether it's worth doing this sort of thing tailored to whatever your project is for your game, whether I would do it again, that sort of thing. So it really sort of straddles the design marketing, I guess, dichotomy. Because it was a game unto itself, right? Like, the ARG ended up being a game that was related to but distinct from the game that you're playing on the screen right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's a good talk, and I'm very curious to see it. Something I really want to know, and maybe you can just tell me since we're here right now, is like, what was it like to get all the different developers to collaborate on this? Because what I remember most from this whole thing is this weird symbol showing up in so many different games, and just being like totally blown away.
Apparently, drove Waypoint editor Patrick Klepek to madness.
Yeah, no, I trolled him super hard. I targeted him specifically.
Wait, was that you who was like the key master or the symbol master or whatever?
Yeah.
I feel like that's really good.
Yeah. And I also sent him cryptic emails with like the Eye of Sauron in it from burner Gmail accounts that I immediately deactivated after sending the email, so he couldn't reply. It was good. I had some fun with that, and I hope he did too.
I mean, we heard about it, so clearly.
I'm gonna ask another question after Alex answers this question. So.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I mean, my question is just what was involved with like trying to get all the different devs to get those symbols into their games and sort of be a part of your grand conspiracy.
So a lot of that was Jim before I started working on the sort of narrative section of the ARG, the puzzles and all that. Jim is way better connected in this industry than I am by virtue of having been around for a lot longer and made things that I have not. But not to speak from him for him, but the way I understand it is he went to a bunch of people who he was friendly with and trusted and just said, hey, do you want to be a part of this? And they said, yeah, sounds cool. And to hear him tell it, and I think that he has a talk where he goes in a little depth about this that he did at Amaze, I believe, in Germany last year, where he said that people are willing to donate their time and effort to be part of something that they think is cool. And
yes, that seems self-evident. Yeah, but of course, like I think a lot of devs don't presume that what they're working on is cool. Like a lot of people don't have the self-confidence to say like, this idea that I have, it's going to be rad. I'm like, so I know it's going to be rad.
I don't think. Well, if everybody had said no, I don't think it would have been cool. Like I think that it was a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, because once you get a bunch of developers on board, then more people want to be on board. And I mean, I have seen this borne out in my own life with my podcast. When we were just starting, like one of our first guest developers was Edmund McMillan, who is, his huge following, and we just shot him an email. I don't know him, but I said, hey, would you do this? And he was like, yeah, sure. But that like really helped us build our show into a thing that people now tell us is cool.
Nice.
I disagree, but
ironically, one of my first actual interviews was with Ed McMillan as well.
Okay,
he's a cool guy.
I've never talked to Ed McMillan.
Yeah, so
I feel left out.
I did get other developers who I knew that Jim didn't to put stuff in later, but the initial group was all Jim. And there may still be those going into games today. I don't know. Frog Fractions 2.
Oh my god, Frog Fractions never ended.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've seen some stuff. I don't know. Have you played Emily is Away too?
I have not. Not yet.
Not.
I might now.
Have you talked about this with anyone else, or are we the first people to learn that there's more fractions to Frog out there?
I've said... I did a show with Anthony Birch where I said that there's definitely still stuff out there that's, I guess, unfound.
Okay.
But I've never like. It
feels like a lot of
said.
I suddenly realized we might be part of Frog Fractions now.
I told you at the start. This is my Frog Fractions too.
Yeah, I've never said what exactly people have. I mean, people know about Emily is Away too, which is why I can talk about it.
Yeah.
But people have not found everything, and I think that. Maybe they never will. The game is out, and so people aren't really actively looking the way they were before. But, maybe they'll stumble across something cool in a game someday. I don't know. People asked if Breath of the Wild had a sigil in it. Maybe it does.
The best ARG is the one you don't know you're playing.
Yeah.
Bryant, did you have a question you wanted to slip in here somewhere? I don't want to just stampede past it.
I did, but now I'm just drowning in the weight of possibly being a new part of Frog Fractions. Was something to do with like asking those developers about stuff, and now I'm totally forgetting. Sorry.
Did they have anything fun to say about stuff when you were talking to them? I don't know. I'm curious to know, Bryant, what you are doing in this video game.
I don't even know. I'm just pushing on.
Navigating the text world.
I am pushing buttons and hoping that things happen. Essentially, this is kind of this kind of reminds you of other puzzle games where it's like I was playing Thimbleweed Park on the Switch on the way back, and it's kind of like I have no freaking clue what I'm precisely supposed to be accomplishing this minute, but I know if I poke things and the balls start rolling in the right downward direction, I'm doing the right thing. Just kind of my mentality right now. So like I made that portal. This portal will get me back to the start right now, which is more than it was doing earlier.
Well, the text is open to interpretation. Justin, is this your first time at GDC? I'm just curious.
No, this will be my third time, I think.
Yeah. Is it your first time speaking?
First time speaking. Yeah. Well, before this, I didn't have anything I was allowed to talk about. So.
Yeah.
Are you nervous?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. I teach, so I spend a lot of my time standing up in front of people that are like maybe half asleep or kind of paying attention, and talking at them for a while. Huh. So in that, not to bash my fellow GDC attendees, but I know it's a tiring experience. You're on for like a full week of stuff, so I understand, and I think I'm prepared. I've got copious public speaking experience.
I think your crowd response really depends on what day you're speaking. Do you happen to know what day you're speaking? I should look it up.
The schedule's
not off the top of my head,
yet.
But okay. Well, then the answer is no. Maybe if you could tell me, that'd be good. But
I know, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, chances are you're probably early. It'll be early in the week, I'm sure.
Yeah, you can pull some strings for me, right?
Yeah, no problem. So as a teacher, I'm just curious. Like, we do speak to a lot of folks who work in the game industry and have some teaching experience, but I don't think I've ever asked anybody like, what have you learned from your time trying to catch and hold the attention of a bunch of people who may only be tangentially interested in whatever you happen to be talking about at the time? What have you learned about like being a good public speaker?
In my experience, talking to a bunch of freshman college students, I'm lucky because in my class, almost everybody who's there wants to be, like, explicitly chose to be there. Which is it's a writing course. It's like your standard English writing, introduction to writing that everybody takes when they get to college. But it's about technology and sort of technology and society. It has social interactions and technology interface with each other. And they choose to be in that one over like, economics or like globalization or whatever other topics are offered. So I have that going for me. I've got like a friendly, if not always engaged audience, and that helps a lot. But I found that it's really about being seeming like you're a normal person, that anybody. And I guess this is like the president test too. Like which of the candidates when they're running do you want to like most have a beer with? That's like a thing that people talk about. That's really important. Like being a person that you actually want to listen to, and being funny, I think. And that's not like getting up and being a stand-up comedian. But just knowing how to phrase things and how to position things in such a way that people find it not ha-ha funny, but engaging and amusing enough that they all keep going. And I don't know, that's my strategy.
No, I think that's right on point. And having, I think the best thing you can do is just to be relaxed, which is so frustrating because the number one thing you're going to be if you're nervous about speaking is not relaxed. But emotions and feelings, people pick up on that stuff. And so if a speaker at GDC or anywhere else is too nervous or too tight or too anxious, like everyone in the room is going to catch that. So just, and especially at GDC, which, even more so than school. I mean, in both places, people have paid to be there for the most part, right? But I feel like at GDC, there's such an outpouring of enthusiasm and passion for just like the craft that chances are like, if you're excited about what you're talking about, your audience will be too. And like, I don't know, I'm always curious to hear what speakers have to suggest about how to better present at GDC and at other conferences, because like that's such a valuable part of the industry is those like knowledge sharing events. But yeah,
believe me, I've been with enough academics in a room where academics are talking to know that like the most compelling subject matter in the world is destroyed if you're a boring speaker, and so lots of academics are not good public speakers. Yeah,
and like the only academic conferences I've ever attended were GDC, basically, like some of the more like really out there and like technical talks. So I'm just curious, like, how does your experience at GDC compare to some of the more academic conferences you've either attended or spoken at?
So it's way less specialized in my experience. I mean, you can go to something like MLA, which is very broad, but in general, like a lot of in English literature conference, you get like the Shakespeare conference where everybody's going to talk about Shakespeare. I'm generalizing because, but just this is very, very niche. Or you'll get like the early modern Renaissance, whatever conferences, and you're in a room and person gets up with a paper and they read from their paper, and then they maybe take some questions, and that's how it works.
Oh.
And not every conference is like that, but that's just sort of like the shape of what people think of when they think about a conference. And because the emphasis isn't on the speaker's presentation so much as the content of their paper, a lot of people never get better at speaking.
Yeah.
Whereas with Gamasutra, or not with GDC, you have, I mean, with Gamasutra's written content, I guess, but with GDC as a conference, the number of tracks available and the breadth of talks on offer are so wide. And I think it's in part because there just aren't as many games conferences like this as there are academic conferences. You know, how many of this scale are there for games versus any discipline in sort of the academic field, really? Yeah. So you get a huge turnout and a huge number of potential talk topics.
Yeah, I mean, this may surprise you, but being one one of our first streams of the year, I maybe didn't do a deep amount of reading on what we'd be talking about beforehand. I know you are self-described as an ARG master and a writer, but I'm getting the impression that you are not in school to write video games. Like, perhaps you have expertise in other areas and you have interest in literature beyond games. Can we talk a little bit about that? Like, yeah. I'm just curious. Yeah, like, so
I did not give myself the title ARG Master. No, that was Jim put
so
that
it's
in
not self-professed.
No, that is what Jim put as my job title in the credits of the game.
It's really good.
So it's an inherited title, not an earned title, I guess. But I am not in school to write for games. I'm in school to think about storytelling sort of in a broad sense and narrative. And I think games, I like games. I have played a lot of games. I have made some games. It's always been a part of my life. But I always wanted to, like, if you had met me when I was 4 and you were like, what are you going to do? I would have said, I'm going to, like, go to college and then go to grad school and get a PhD in English.
Wow, 4-year-old you was really eloquent.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I have stuff that I have left over from my childhood that I've written that like bears out that I thought that. I've just always known what I wanted to do. And
that's so, okay. So like, I'm just curious. Can we zero in on that? Because like, get a PhD in English is typically not someone's end goal in life. Like, what is your fascination with literature in general and storytelling in that regard?
So storytelling is, literature is storytelling, right? Storytelling as an enterprise is like one of the oldest things that humans do as a species. It's the primary vehicle, much like play and like games. It is, I don't know if it's the primary, but it is one of the primary vehicles that we as a species use to learn about and think about the world around us, the things that happen to us, to play out scenarios and ideas that maybe prepare us for potential future events or thought experiments, etc. They are, across all cultures, just a consistent mode of communication that it seems inherent to humanity as a species. And games are really interesting because play, as I said before, is an inherent part, not just of the human experience, but like of life. You see animals play with each other all the time, and it's another way that we learn and experiment with the world around us. And so with narrative games in the past couple of decades becoming more and more prominent as a form in a way that they really weren't for most of time. I mean, if you look at the history of games, like you're not really going to say, I don't know, chess or Go or the Royal Game of or Senate or what the games that have existed for thousands and thousands of years aren't really strongly narrative driven. So this combines two things that really interest me, that I see as fundamental to sort of the human experience in a way that's pretty cutting edge in terms of research, because games as a academic field is really nascent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna. How do you respond? Sometimes I feel like I encounter people in the games industry who resent a storytelling part of games. That may be an unfair evaluation.
Yeah.
But especially
you're
because
right.
I know people who insist that games have bad story fundamentally, which I don't agree with. But I'm curious what your take on that is.
So, people who know me may have at times heard me say that all game stories are bad. I don't know if I actually believe that, but I do think that this is a thing that we were talking before the stream started about Laura, our friend Laura.
Yeah.
And this is a thing that I've spoken with her about at some length.
Laura Michette, who helped out on Frog Krakens, just for those who don't know.
Yeah. And so part of the problem with games is that, or compared to books or film, which are too much older, although film's like not that much older, they are both older and more established narrative forms. And we understand where meaning in those forms is derived from. So if you were, there's actually a really good GDC talk by Cliff Blazinski called Dynamics, State of the Art, where he talks about the Coulier effect and how in film, meaning is derived through the cut. Cutting between two images transposes those images in a way that the viewer is able to get some sort of meaning from their juxtaposition.
Yeah.
How does that happen in games? We understand how narrative works in some games. I feel like I can pretty safely say we've solved the text adventure, right? We understand how narrative meaning happens in a text adventure. I don't think that we've done that for every genre, and the more mechanically complex games get, the bigger that challenge is. So even the most mechanically complex film, in terms of the craft, is still a director pointing a camera at something, right? And when in a game, a lot of times the player is the camera person, or the director, or the builder, if it's Minecraft, whatever the game is, it's much harder to point at a specific thing. And people are searching for the Citizen Kane of games, because I think not because they're looking, when people were saying that 10 years ago, what's the Citizen Kane of games? I think that they weren't saying what is the game that legitimizes games as an art form. They were saying what is the game that explains the medium to us as viewers and players and critics. The way that Citizen Kane, which gets the credit because nobody watches Birth of a Nation because it's super racist.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what they were looking for, right? If you were to really sit down and think about why do people want a Citizen Kane of games, it's because they're looking for something that gives the form meaning in a way that we can articulate. And I don't know if we're ever going to have a Citizen Kane of games, and I don't think we need one.
No,
I think that it's the sort of thing that gradually unfurls itself through the creation of more and more games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the former film student here said the Citizen Kane is kind of a better expressed as something else. I feel like games are
Spelunky.
It's its own Citizen Kane of its own time is a strange amalgamation of Orson Welles' theater background, a world that had just come out of the newspaper wars that the movie is about, and then adapting some of the new narrative techniques which would later become standard. So it's kind of its own thing. It's not it's everyone calls it the greatest movie of all time because it winds up on that AFI list or something. But it's really kind of its own beast.
Yeah, and personally, if you were to ask me do you want to watch Citizen Kane, I would say no. I think Citizen Kane is really boring and not fun to watch, because I watched it once and I got the film critic sort of stuff out of it, and I didn't love it. I thought I was glad that I watched it. Not to dunk on Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane is fine, but for me, I personally would not choose to watch that movie for entertainment. And I think that a lot of people are coming to media looking for entertainment, and so that really muddles the discussion. Because you have academics saying one thing and consumers saying another thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually follow that up with where do you actually said something that I think I've actually everyone's all game stories are trash. but
They are.
there is still value in the game story, if you get my drift. Like, I'm thinking about Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a game that arguably is just like a very similar B-movie plot like thing, but in many ways as a narrative experience, it's actually, I think, up there with some of my favorite like genre books and etc. Like the value of something like trash doesn't necessarily mean terrible, is where my ramble goes. Is that what you're kind of pointing at?
Kind of. I didn't play Horizon Zero Dawn, so I can't speak to that one. Yeah, I can't speak to that one specifically. But I do think there are plenty of books and movies that I have read or watched that I wouldn't say are like artistically valuable the way that other ones are. You know, there are gradations of what is good art and what is pop art and what is not going to last and what is. And that's whatever. You know, you could have those discussions if you're interested in it. But I think that not everything needs to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting to me about this whole conversation, and like we're running out of time, so of course we're not going to have time to really get into it. But like I just want to say, like I also tend to offhandedly say most game stories are trash. And what I mean by that is not they are total garbage that should be in the trash, so I shouldn't say that. What I mean is like they don't tell stories in the same way that our traditional storytelling mediums do. Like if I want to be told a story, I pick up a book because it's just better at telling me a story than a game is in almost every regard. But games are such fantastic tools to set people up, to like set the table for people to tell their own stories. And like no other medium can do that but play, I think. You know, whether it's chess and checkers or it's Horizon Zero Dawn, like the strength of those things is giving you stories to tell other people. It's not so much like telling you, oh, here's this, you know, crazy I've never played Horizon, so I have no idea what the story is. I don't know. But I bet it's great.
Robot dinosaurs, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a little more to it than that, but yeah, it's
Here's
cool.
this post-apocalypse.
So I think that when you say like games are bad at telling stories, I think that part of it is because a lot of games are interested in telling stories the way that movies tell stories, which is like I don't know if this is true, but I've heard, was it Ron Gilbert that like invented cutscene as a term? I think it was for Monkey Island, and I think that he regrets that. He can come and tell me that I'm wrong if I'm crediting him with something that he didn't say. But I think that he said that he regrets that because it is like that's the way that movies tell stories, right? Is they take, you have no control, you're just shown a video of something. That's what a cutscene is. But I think that as game writers and narrative designers, and I think really narrative design is the thing that gets the story across. It's the integration of the story that you want to tell with the mechanics of play. And that's really where games do their best work. And I think that that's why games are really good at making the players feel specific emotions, like guilt. Guilt is something that I think games do way better than books or movies. I don't know if you guys have played like The Walking Dead by Telltale, the first season.
Absolutely.
And if you play through The Walking Dead more than once, you realize that like your choices don't matter. That entire story goes on rails. No matter what you do, it's going to go the same way, basically, with very minor variations that ultimately loop back into the same story anyway. And that's how all games are. All games with stories, because they're not Dungeons & Dragons run by a human who can organically adapt, are set to some degree, largely or less largely, and basically are lying to you about how much influence you have over the story. But in the moment of play, you don't think, oh, this game is lying to me, I shouldn't listen to it. You think, your brain thinks, I did a thing, I did an action and I saw a reaction, and the reaction was I killed a person accidentally. And you feel bad about that, even though it's within the context of the game. And I don't know any movie that makes you feel guilty for doing something the way that games do.
Yeah.
So it's I'm really culpable.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Brian, people in chat really want you to find this white key
No,
sword
they want me to find
thing.
the sword. I have the white key, and I just realized it's how I doff and don my skates.
Oh.
But I don't know what autocorrect skates do.
Do you think you can find the sword in the next 5 minutes?
No.
Come on, you can do it.
The ability to remove the skates was literally one playtester who hated them so much and requested them to be removable that we said okay.
What do they do? Do they just speed you up?
No, they make it so that if you touch a wall, you move to the left or right instead of just doing nothing.
Oh.
They correct your movement.
Oh, okay.
Are they granny skates or are they rollerblades? This is an important lore question.
They're skates, not rollerblades.
Okay. All right.
I have no clue how to get past these cockroaches.
You need a sword.
But how do I get the sword?
You can do it.
Yeah. You can. You walked. You walked past.
I
the
saw
sword,
the
like,
sword,
earlier in
but
the
it was
game.
like, oh, you need to master this to get the sword. And I'm like, what is this? Curse your.
Well, you know.
Games are truly the epitome of culpability.
It is a mystery.
What emotions do you feel right now, Brian, weighing on you as you engage in this interactive narrative?
I want to find a dwarf. No, it's not a dwarf fortress. I can't get mad at dwarves. I want to find a frog and just do something bad to it. Okay. Master using it. Oh, the skates? Master using the skates? No.
So that's the mega sword. You need the regular sword before you can get the mega sword.
Just like real life.
You can't just jump to the mega sword, man.
Yeah.
Toaster derivatives. Where the heck is toaster derivatives? I'm looking at a guide. I'm sorry.
You mean flappy toaster?
Go northeast through the red door. Where's the red key? I need the red key to go through the red door.
Oh man.
You're looking at it. It's on the screen right there.
You got this.
Oh, it's over there. Okay, so I need to solve this stuff. Okay. Sorry, normally, everyone, we spit... Oh, I see. Okay, I see what I can do. I see what I can actually interact with. Okay, I'm going.
Justin, do you have any... Let's use these last few minutes to sort of, like, hype your talk, because I'm hyped for it. So I want to hear, like, why do you think people should come and check out your talk at GDC this year?
Well, if you wanted to know what happened in the ARC, that's the best reason. If you want to hear me talk more, that's another good reason, although, like, that's more dubious. If you want to learn about whether an ARG is the right choice for marketing your game, maybe that's another good reason. I don't know. That's 3 reasons, right? That seems good.
That's good. Magic number.
Yeah. I don't know.
What's the website that tracks all the ARG studies again? You mentioned it earlier.
There's
that whole collective.
Yeah, it's called...
I should know this.
Now I'm blanking.
Something.
Unfiction.
Unfiction. Thank you.
Yes.
Everyone check that out because it's cool, and I always think, oh, I should look in on that like once a year, and then I spend half a day pouring through random things. Did you study that while you were designing this at all, or did you only find it afterwards?
I followed there was an Unfiction thread about the Frog Fractions ARG that I followed very, very intently because it was the only way, that I had any idea what the players had solved or not, because they would post their progress as they made it. And eventually they stopped using that forum thread and moved to a Discord channel, which was way better for them because they could have conversations in real time, and way worse for me because Discord at that point didn't have a chat log or a searchable any search features. Discord was very, very early days, so I just had to like take a fake name and lurk.
I think you probably weren't alone. That's like I had friends who weren't interested in actually solving it, but just like loved watching people go back and forth at random times of day. Like 2:00 in the morning Pacific, all of a sudden there'd be this burst of activity as somebody discovered something. Wow, Brian, you can come on. Oh.
And I know that other developers who had that were in the sigil Illuminati would also poke their heads in and watch. Jake Rodkin from Campo Santo, he had a sigil in Firewatch. He told me that he lost like 2 full days of productivity to watching the Discord chat.
Yep.
After the Firewatch sigil got discovered, and it was a really good time. I was gonna say I would love to do it again, but I don't know if I would love to do it again. I wouldn't say no. Let's say. But to hear the full context of that, you'll have to come to the talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, you're doing great. It's such a weird throwback because like I was just thinking about this a couple days ago. I don't think you can play Flappy Bird anymore on a new iPhone. So
You cannot. I've got my iPhone 7 with iOS 11 right here.
Yeah.
This first app here is Flappy Bird, and I have it there even though when I tap it, it says it doesn't work because I'm never gonna delete it.
Man.
It's the very first game app on my phone in tribute to the fallen Flappy Bird.
Man. Right, you can do this.
I don't know how
Pressure.
to lower my fuel anymore.
Justin, do you know of any ARGs that have been done for a non-commercial purpose? I was just thinking about that. I was like, I wonder if there ever will be one or if there has been one already. Because it's just an interesting, just like a realm of design and storytelling, but it's so often tied to like a movie or an album or a video game.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? It's expensive and time-consuming to produce one, so if you're not getting funding for it somehow, it's a tough sell.
Yeah.
The Frog Fractions 2 ARG, when I was just making it by myself before it was the Frog Fractions 2 ARG, was an ARG that was not for commercial benefit, but it was literally a thing that I was just going to mail to some people in an unmarked envelope and see what they did with it.
That might be kind of weird, I guess, if you did that. And I guess that it's really messed up that, like, in our relatively capitalist, in our pretty capitalist society, doing anything interactive and sort of like asking things of other people when there's no like transaction involved is weird. Like, why would you send people just random notes in the mail unless you wanted them to buy something or up to no good?
Yeah. It's like there are definitely companies and services that do ARGs not in service of any, like they are a business, but they are just in service of the experience of the ARG.
Huh.
The Mysterious Package Company is probably the biggest one.
Right, yeah.
And they just sell that stuff like as its own thing, not in service of some other product. But, congrats, you got the sword.
I got the sword.
But I don't know if there are any ARGs that are just free and running for the sake of being ARGs.
Yeah.
Even the one that my podcast does is still like for our Patreon backers. I guess we don't have to do that because they're like donating to us, but it's still like we feel motivated to give them something.
Sure, yeah. All right, Bryant, where do you take the sword?
I just want to die.
Your equipment suffices.
You're the chosen one. Plunge the sword.
Got the sword and I want to die. That's my takeaway today.
I forgot I wrote that joke and I laughed at it.
Oh, man, not scab labor.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't trust those soapstone messages.
Nope.
Okay.
There's only one officially licensed hint giver, and it is Titania the Fairy.
Got it.
All right, Brian, the stream's in your hands now. You got the off button and you're carrying the sword, so just take us all the way through.
You are listening to the Gamasutra Twitch channel. You are watching it too. This is a wonderful channel made by wonderful people, I think, who occasionally go live to talk about the art and business of making games. We are here to talk about... we came here to talk about Frog Fractions 2, but we're going to do some other stuff.
And the important thing is not what we talked about or didn't talk about. It's the friends we made along the way.
Yeah, see? Let's bring it around. It's what we call a callback in the comedy business.
There you go.
Do we hit the rule of 3? Do we make it hit the rule of 3?
Maybe. We'd have to we would have had to have made that joke like half at the 30-minute mark.
Oh yeah.
For it to really have landed. But
I mean, technically you're playing Frog Fractions 3, right? So we're already there.
Yeah,
it's
comedy.
True.
Okay. I was gonna say.
What are you supposed to do with this sword? What are you gonna?
I can cut shrubs. I'm just finding things to cut. You can. We would appreciate it if you were to click the follow button. Or on the Gamasutra channel, because if you do, you'll get more notifications about more great Twitch speakers, or not Twitch speakers, GDC speakers, who are going to be giving talks at GDC this year. We're going to do more conversations about them, their work, and their perspectives on making games. We need to do our obligatory reminder that Gamasutra and GDC are sister organizations owned by UVM. So we are here on a mission to help our sister out, our sister organization. I guess that's how you say it.
We're a team. Sometimes teams work together.
Gotta help a sister out.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you want to follow
except for
Hufflepuff, which is Justin, should they just follow you at Lord Huff and Puff on Twitter, Justin?
Yeah, that is my Twitter. So if you're inclined to do so, that is the way to do it.
So you should do that because Justin, this has been a lovely conversation about creative work, even as I cry in agony about what I'm doing. Like, even as I bemoan trying to figure out what is in front of me. Oh no.
This is how I know it's been over a year since this game came out, is because I see the jokes and I laugh at them again instead of just going, oh yeah, that's a thing. enough time has passed apparently.
Okay, everyone go back to AGDQ. It's time to wrap it up. Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for watching this instead of that.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.